We're on SAT test number 5, section 3 today. It's 25 minutes, no calculator, 20 questions. You know, sometimes when people are faced with adversity, there creates an opportunity. Things are changing rapidly every day. The SAT test for April and the test for May have now been canceled by the College Board. So the next test date available will be the first Saturday in June. So now you have time to prepare for this test. By the way, thank you for watching, and remember to subscribe and hit the like button if you learn something new in this video. Right here I have the cover sheet, and it says questions 1 through 15 are multiple choice, and then the last 5 are the grid-ins, where you grid in the answer on the answer sheet. I'm not going to go over all the formulas, but you should know the formulas here that are listed for reference, so you don't have to waste time and go back and forth. So I'm going to recommend that you memorize all of these formulas right here. You should be very familiar with them, and on every test there's going to be 2 or 3 of those to be used on the test. Okay, so here is question number 1. It says, which of the following is an equation of line L in the xy plane? And so you have a line here, and it looks like the y-intercept is at 1, and the slope is 1. So that would be y equals x plus 1. And of course you recognize y is equal to mx plus b, where the slope is 1 and the y-intercept is 1, and that was the answer for that one. For problem number 2, we have a circle with the center of O has a circumference of 36. What is the length of minor arc AC? So from A to C, right here, what is this length? Well, this is 90 degrees here, so 90 degrees is 1/4 of 360. So then we would have 1/4 of the circumference. 1/4 of 36 is 9. So the answer here should be A, which is 9. Number 3 is a quadratic equation. It says, what are the solutions of the quadratic equation 4x squared minus 4x minus 12 equals to 0? Well, it looks like we could factor a 4, or maybe we could divide everything by 4 to simplify this. Divide that by 4, divide that by 4, divide every term by 4, and when you do that, you're going to have x squared, and then minus 8x divided by 4 is a minus 2x, and then you're going to have minus 12 divided by 4 is minus 3, and 0 divided by 4 is 0. So now it looks like this is a little bit easier to factor, so we can go ahead and factor this out and say, well, x squared is x times x, and factors of 3 are 1 and 3. And we have a minus here, a minus there, so we need plus minus, so we'll put minus here and a plus there, and this equals to 0. And see if this is okay. So we check by multiplying this by FOIL. X times x is x squared. This is 1x, and this is minus 3x. When we add those together, that'll give us this minus 2x. And then the last one with the last one gives us minus 3. So that looks like that's factored correctly. And so that means that each factor would be equal to 0. So x plus 1 is equal to 0. And x minus 3 is equal to 0. And when we do that, we have x is equal to negative 1. And x is equal to 3. If I add 3 on both sides, I get x equals 3. And I get x equals to negative 1 if I subtract 1 on both sides of that. So negative 1 and 3, so we look at the answers. We have negative 1 here and a negative 1 here, but we need negative 1 and 3. So it looks to me like the answer should be B. Now, is there a way to check this? Is there a way that we could check this answer? Yeah, there is. And in fact, I'm going to show you a quick trick that you could do this. In the previous video, we had sum of the roots was negative b over a. So in this quadratic, if you have a negative 2 here over 1, a negative b. This tells you that the sum of the roots should be 2. And so if I add negative 1 plus 3, I get 2. So it's a good way to check. Now also, if I was doing this test and I was under time conditions, I would look for the sum of the roots and say, well, the sum of the roots is 2. This adds up to negative 4. This adds up to negative 2. And this adds up to 4. So the only one that adds up to 2 is answer B, and that's the answer. And you don't have to do any factoring and or quadratic formula or anything that takes too long. And that was the answer for that one. That's going to be the easiest way of doing that problem. Okay, so problem number 4 says, which of the following is an example of a function whose graph in the xy plane has no x-intercepts? So we're looking for no x-intercepts. That means that there's no real zeros. A linear function whose rate of change is not 0. Well, a linear function would cross the x-axis if the rate of change is not 0. That means it cannot be a horizontal line. Okay, so that one is out. A quadratic equation with real zeros, well, if it has real zeros, it will have at least 1 or 2 x-intercepts. A quadratic equation with no real zeros has no x-intercepts. So that means it probably might look like this. Here's your x-axis, and this is your y. So it does not cross. So if you have no real zeros, you have 2 complex imaginary zeros, and that would be the answer. Let's take a look at answer D. A cubic polynomial with at least 1 real zero, at least 1, it might look like that, or it could look like that. So at least 1, you're going to have at least 1. So here you have to know that anytime you have a real zero, then that means you have an x-intercept. So in this case, answer C is the one that makes the most sense, because a quadratic function with no real zeros will have no x-intercepts. So the answer here has to be C. Okay, moving right along to number 5, it says, in the equation above, k is a constant, and we also know that x equals to 9. What is the value of k? So we're looking for k here, and if x equals 9, we can replace this x with 9. So you're going to have x, you have a minus 9 here, so I'm going to add 9 to both sides. And I'm going to rewrite that on the bottom here. I'm going to have the square root of k plus 2. If I add 9 to both sides, that equals to 9. And if I want to get rid of the square root, I have to square both sides. So I'm going to square both sides. And by doing that, I now have the square root and square root cancel out. I now have that k plus 2 is equal to 9 squared, which is 81. And if I subtract 2 on both sides, I think you already know that k has to equal to 81 minus 2, which is 79. And that would be answer D. That would be the correct answer there, answer D. Problem number 6 says, which of the following is equivalent to the sum, that means we're going to be adding these together, a squared minus 1 and a plus 1. So we need to add those. So we're going to have a squared minus 1. I'm going to leave a space there for the a. And I'm going to have a plus 1. And I'm going to add these together. So you notice that the minus 1 and plus 1 will cancel out. And I'm left with a squared plus a. And in this case, the answer would be answer A. And that's the answer. Okay, number 7 says, Jackie has 2 summer jobs. She works as a tutor and is paid $12 per hour, and she works as a lifeguard, which pays $9.50 per hour, and she can work no more than 20 hours per week, but she wants to earn at least. So she's got 20 hours per week, and she wants to earn at least $220 per week. So which of the following systems of inequalities represents this situation in terms of x and y? Well, what is x? Well, x is going to be the number of hours that she tutors. And how much does she get paid for tutoring? For tutoring, she's getting paid $12 per hour, $12 per hour for x hours. And also we know that y is the number of hours she works as a lifeguard. And how much does she get paid for working as a lifeguard? Well, as a lifeguard, it says here that she gets paid $9.50 per hour. So, plus $9.50 per hour for Y hours that she works as a lifeguard. And does she want to make more than 220 or less than 220? Well, if she's going to earn at least 220, it's got to be more than 220. So we would say at least that could equal to 220. At least that much, if not more. She'd like to make a lot more than that, 250 or 300. And then how many hours is she going to work? When you combine the two summer jobs, X and Y, she can work no more than 20 hours per week. Okay, so that means that X plus Y is no more. That means at most 20. That would have to be less than or equal to 20. Okay, now we don't have to solve this. We just have to match it up with the right answer. 12x plus 9y. And if you look at 12x plus 9y and 220, that's going to be in almost all of them. But we're looking for greater than or equal to. So we need to be aware that we're looking for at least 220. So this one would be out. That's less than 220. This one's out. That's less than 220. So it's either C or D. Well, it depends on the number of hours. In this problem, X plus Y is at most 20. She cannot work more than 20, so it has to be less than or equal to 20. So that means it has to be this one right here. X plus Y has to be less than or equal to 20. So a lot of the answers look the same, so you do have to spend a little time and make sure that you identify the correct answer. So in this problem, the correct answer was C. C is the correct answer for number 7. Number 8. In air, the speed of sound s in meters per second is a linear function of the air temperature T in degrees Celsius and is given by the formula S of T is equal to 0.6 T plus 331.4. So since we're talking about a linear function, think of y is equal to mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So what are they asking? Which of the following statements is the best interpretation of the number 331.4 in this context? Well, 334 right here represents the y-intercept, b. Well, in this case, it intercepts. So how do you find the y-intercept? If x is 0, what's y, and so on. So the first answer, the speed of sound in meters per second at 0 degrees Celsius. So at 0 degrees, if t is 0, then the speed of sound is 331.4. That's like the y-intercept. When x is 0, what's y? And in this case, if t is 0, what's s? So to me, this should be the correct answer and you should move on. And that's all you really need to do. You can look at the other answers if you have extra time in the test. Remember, we only have a certain amount of time. The speed of sound in meters per second is 0.6. No. The increase in speed of sound in meters per second, that corresponds to an increase. No. And the increase in the speed of sound in meters per second, that corresponds. No, that's not correct either. So the answer was A for this one. Okay, problem number 9. Y equals x squared, parabola, and then you have a linear function, 2y plus 6 equals 2 times x plus 3. If xy is a solution of the system of equations, so we have a system of equations here, and x is greater than 0, so x has to be positive, what is the value of x times y? So in this case, since y is equal to x squared, maybe we could do a little substitution, replace y here with x squared. So you're going to have 2x squared plus 6 is equal to 2 times x plus 2 times 3. So I have 2x squared plus 6 is equal to 2x plus 6. I'm using distributive property on the right-hand side. And I've already replaced y with x squared. So if I subtract 6 on both sides to simplify this, I now have that 2x squared is equal to 2x. And if I divide by 2 on both sides, I now have that x squared is equal to x. And since x is greater than 0, it can't be 0, I could divide by x on both sides, and I get that x equals to 1. And if x is 1, what's y? Y is 1. 1 squared is 1. Now, what is the question asking for? Well, the question is asking for the product of x times y. If x is 1 and y is 1, then the product of x times y is going to be 1 times 1, which is 1. So in this case, the answer is 1. Answer A. Now, this problem is one of those problems that I can give you a little tip, a little shortcut maybe, and I'll use a red pen for that. If you notice that y is equal to x squared, and if we're looking for xy, and I'm going to replace y, what was y again? X squared. So I'm going to replace y with x squared. So now I have x times x squared. So what I'm really looking for is x cubed, right? What is x cubed? And x has to be greater than 0, okay? So whatever x is, x happens to be a perfect cube. If x is 1, you get 1. If x is 2, 2 cubed. If x is 3, 3 cubed. And so on, and so on. 4 cubed, 5 cubed. So if we look at the answer choices, none of these are perfect cubes. 1 is the only perfect cube, and that was the answer. So from the very beginning, if you had done this, you could have done this problem in about 7 seconds. And that will be it for number 9. Okay, we're on number 10 now. And number 10 says if a squared plus b squared is equal to z, and a times b equals y, which of the following is equivalent to 4z plus 8y? Now, if you look at the answers are in terms of a and b. So we want everything in terms of a and b. So in this case, we have a squared plus b squared is equal to z. We're looking for 4z. So 4z would be 4 times z. Well, z is just going to be a squared plus b squared plus 8y. Oops. Well, what is y? Y is ab. So plus 8 times a times b. So in this problem, we're going to have a 4a squared, and we're also going to have a 4b squared. And since this is a perfect square trinomial, the 8ab is actually the middle term here. And so this would be your answer. However, these are factored out on the answer choices. So if you look at 4a squared, that's actually 2ab squared. And if you look at 4b squared, that's actually 2b squared. So if you take 2a plus 2b and you square that, it will give you that answer. So in this case, the answer was B. Number 11. The volume of a right circular cylinder, A, is 22 cubic centimeters. So this is a volume of A. What is the volume in cubic centimeters of a right circular cylinder with twice the radius and half the height of A? Okay, so the volume of a cylinder is given by the formula. The area of the base, which is pi r squared, times a height. Remember those formulas in the cover sheet? That's why I said we need to memorize those. So pi r squared h. And in this case, this is 22. Now, we're going to make some changes here, and now it says twice the radius. So this r becomes 2r, twice the radius, and we square that, and we still have pi there. But the height becomes what? Half the height. So we're going to have half the height. And so we want to know what this new volume is. Okay? And so in this case, we're going to have 2r squared. So that's going to be 4r squared. And then times 1/2 h. So if we take 1/2, and there's your pi, it's a constant. 1/2 times 4, that's 2. So you're going to have actually 2 pi r squared h. Well, if 1 pi r squared h is 22, then 2 of those would be 44. And this is what happens if you double the radius and you half the height. The answer should be 44. Answer C. Number 12, you have a question that says, which of the following is equivalent to 9 raised to the 3/4 power? So that's a rational exponent, so you're going to have 9 to the 3/4 power. That's the same thing as 9 to the 1/4 power, and then cube. Or you could do 9 cubed and then 1/4 power. Now we notice that 1/4 is also 1/2 times 1/2, and just to review, when you have x to the 1/2 power, I think you already know that's the square root of x. So 1/2 power is square root. So 1/4 would be 1/2, 1/2. So that'd be the 4th root. So here, what we really have is 9 to the 1/2 power, and then 1/2, since 1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4, and then we have to cube that. But what's 9 to the 1/2 power? Well, 9 to the 1/2 power is the square root of 9, which we just said the square root of 9 is 3. So we're going to have 3 to the 1/2 power, and then we're going to have this cube. So 3 to the 1/2 power is the square root of 3. And when we cube that, that means we're going to multiply square root of 3 times itself 3 times, the cube. And so if you take square root of 3 times square root of 3, that gives you 3 times square root of 3. So the answer here should be D. Answer D is 3 square root of 3. Now just to review the other answers, answer A is 9 to the 1/3 power. Well, we had 9 to the 3/4 power. 3/4 is not equal to 1/3, so there's no way this could be right. And this one is 9 to the 1/4 power. 4th root is 1/4. And the question was, what is 9 to the 3/4? Well, 3/4 is not 1/4, so there's no way that could be right. And the square root of 3 is 3 to the 1/2 power. And here we have 9 to the 3/4. There's no way that you can get 9 to the 3/4 unless you, how do you get 3 to the 1/2? So this is the only answer that even makes sense. If you were to look at the other answers and you kind of take a shortcut and not go through all these steps, you could probably get to answer D in a hurry. Number 13, at a restaurant, n cups of tea are made by adding tea bags to hot water. So if T is equal to n plus 2, how many additional tea bags are needed to make each additional cup of tea? So n is the cups of tea. So if I need 1 cup of tea, so if n is 1, I add 2, that means that I need 3 tea bags. Okay? And if n is 2, and I add 2 to that using the formula, that means I need 4 tea bags. Okay? So that means for each additional tea bag, since the coefficient of n here is 1, you're increasing by 1 each time. So each tea bag to make each additional cup of tea. So the answer here should be 1. The answer is B. It's 1. Okay, problem number 14 says f of x is equal to 2 to the x plus 1. So we have an exponential function. And in this case, The y-intercept, first let's take a look at 2x plus 1. And what we're looking for is which of the following graphs is negative f of x. Well, negative f of x is going to be a reflection about the x-axis. So we're looking for a reflection about the x-axis. Maybe the easiest thing to do here is to look at the parent function to the x, which I drew over here on the left-hand side. And if x is 0, y is 1. And if x is 1, y is 2. So you're going to have an exponential function that looks like this. Now, in the original problem, it says 2 to the x plus 1. So the plus 1 is a vertical shift, so it moves everything up 1 unit. So then it goes like this, right? So now the y-intercept for this problem is at 2, okay? And so if we reflect that, this will go to negative 2. And so it looks to me like if I reflect this point, and if I reflect this point here is down here, and so on, it's going to look like this. But I'm going to look for something that crosses the y-axis at negative 2. Well, certainly it's not this one. It's not this one. Here's one at negative 2, here's one at negative 1. So the answer should be C. It crosses the y-axis at negative 2, right there. And that was it for number 14. Okay, number 15, Alan drives an average of 100 miles each week. And his car can travel an average of 25 miles per gallon. Alan would also like to reduce his weekly expenditure on gasoline by $5. Assuming gasoline costs $4 per gallon, which equation can Alan use to determine how many fewer average miles M he could drive each week? So in terms of M, so let's take a look at this. So $4 per gallon is his cost. So we're going to have $4 per gallon. That's gasoline cost. And also, we know that he gets 25 miles per gallon. 25 miles per gallon. So the per gallon here cancels the per gallon there. So we now have 4 over 25. $4 for every 25. So he's spending $4 for every 25 miles. And he would like to reduce this to what? He would also like to reduce this to $5. So how many miles? So what's M? So if we multiply this times M, then that will equal to $5. This is how many miles that he'll have to, how many fewer miles M. So miles will cancel out, and he's going to get 5. So is there an answer that looks like 4 over 25 times M is equal to 5? Well, it looks like answer D is the answer that we're looking for. And that was the answer here. Okay, the last 5 problems are the grid ends in this section. This is section 3 non-calculator. We're on official test, SAT test number 5. Maria wants to rent a boat. The boat rental costs $60 per hour, and she also has to pay for a water safety course, and that costs $10. So she wants to spend no more than $280, including rental and course. And if the boat rental is available for a whole number of hours, so we need integer values here, what is the maximum number of hours for which Maria can rent a boat? Okay, so how much is it per hour? So $60 per hour, 60x, plus the cost of the course, a safety course that costs $10, and she wants to spend no more than 280. So it has to be less than or equal to 280. And we can solve for x, which would be the maximum number of hours. So if we subtract 10 here and 10 there, we will have that 60x has to be less than or equal to 270. So if we divide by 10 on both sides, we can cancel those out. So we have 6 times the number of hours is less than or equal to 27. Now keep in mind that x is a whole number. X could be 4 or 5. Well, if x is 4, 6 times 4 is 24. If x is 5, you're going to go over that. So the answer is 4 in this case. Of course, you could divide by 6 on both sides. 27 divided by 6, and you're going to get 27 divided by 6, 4. And you're going to have 3 over 6, which is 0.5, but they want whole numbers. So the answer has to be 4, just 4, not 4.5. If you write in this problem the 4.5, because that's what it actually is, you will get it wrong. You have to put a whole number because that's what they're asking for in this problem. So the answer is 4. That was for number 16. Okay, number 17. What is the value of p in the solution of the equation above? So 2 times p plus 1 plus, so we're going to distribute this 2 times that. So we're going to have 2p plus 2 times 1. And then we're going to multiply 8 times p and 8 times that, distribute again. So we're going to have 8p minus 8, and that's equal to 5p. So 2p plus the 8p, we're going to have 10p. And then 2 minus 8 is going to be a minus 6, and that's equal to 5p. And what we could do is add 6 to both sides. That'll get rid of the 6 there. And then get all your p's on one side. So if we subtract 5p on the right and 5p on the left, we now have that 5p is equal to what? 6. So then in this problem, your answer could be 6 over 5. Or 1.2 if you prefer decimals. Remember, this is a grid in, so you could grid in 1.2, or you could write it 6 over 5. However, you cannot write this as a mixed number. You cannot write 1 and 1/5, because on the grid ends, this is going to look like 11 over 5. And of course, you're going to get it wrong if you write 11 over 5. So there's 2 possible answers, 6 over 5 or 1.2, and either one of those would be correct. That's problem number 17. Problem number 18, y equals 2x. So I'm going to replace y here with 2x. So I'm going to have 2x plus 2x. That's 4x, isn't it? So I'm going to have 1/2 of 2x plus 2x, which is 4x. And that's equal to what? 21 over 2 on the right-hand side. Now, if you want to get rid of this fraction, I might suggest that you could multiply by 2 over 1 here and here. That gets rid of the 1/2, and that gets rid of that half. So it looks like 4x is equal to 21. And if you divide by 4, then x is equal to 21 over 4. So you could write the answer as 21 over 4, or you could write it as 5 1/4, but don't write 5 1/4. If you write 5 1/4, it looks like this. 5 1/4 looks like 51 over 4, and you know you should not use mixed numbers. This would be incorrect. 21 over 4 is correct, or if you like 5.25, that is correct, but not 5 1/4. So I'm just going to make a little note here. No mixed numbers like 5 1/4 or any mixed number on this section of the test, because you will get them wrong all the time. Absolutely no mixed numbers. Okay, that's number 18. Okay, moving right along to number 19. 2x plus 6 over x plus 2 squared minus 2 over x plus 2. So when you're adding or subtracting, you need to have the same, what? The same denominator. When you're adding or subtracting fractions or rational expressions, you need to have the same denominator. So the expression above is equivalent to a over x plus 2 squared, where a is a positive constant. So what is the value of a? A is a positive constant, and of course all the answers will be positive in this section. You cannot have a negative answer. And it says x could not be equal to negative 2. You don't really have to worry about this. It just says that you'll never have 0 in the denominator, because that would make it undefined. So if this is x plus 2 squared, I need to have an x plus 2 squared also on this other term. So I'm going to multiply by x plus 2 and x plus 2 on both the numerator and denominator. And by doing that, I now have the same denominators. Okay. So then I'm going to distribute 2 times x plus 2. So I'm going to have here 2 times x is 2x. And then 2 times 2 is 4. But remember that I'm subtracting that from this 2x plus 6. So what I have now is I have 2x plus 6 minus the 2x and minus the 4 from up here at the top. I'm distributing the minus 1 times 2, and minus 1 times 4. So you notice that the 2x's will cancel out, and 6 minus 4 is 2. Over what? Over x plus 2 squared. And so, since they wanted what is a, well, a happens to be the numerator. So in this case, a is 2. A equals 2, and that was the answer. Okay, now we get to the final answer. Number 20, intersecting lines R, S, and T are shown below. And so you have a triangle there. What is the value of x in this problem? Well, let's take a look at this. We're going to have, right here, we have a linear pair. This angle and this angle, 106, add up to 180. So if I take 180 minus the 106, that's going to be 74. So I know this right here is 74 degrees. So I have 74 degrees, and I have 23 degrees there. And this is the exterior angle at this vertex. The exterior angle is the sum of the other two angles furthest away from that vertex. So x is actually going to be 74 plus 23. And if I add those together, I get 97. And that was x. Now there's a longer way of doing this. You could add 74 plus 23 is 97, and then subtract from 180, and then that gives you this angle, and then subtract that from 180 to get x. But I find out that this is a lot easier. The answer was 97 for number 20. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed watching this video, and I hope you learned something new from these problems. At this point, I'm going to ask you to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the like button, and smash the bell for notifications so you get notified the next time I load something up. In the meantime, stay safe, stay home. Until next time, take care.